The Great Hall of the Ziyari Empire was built to make outsiders feel small. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds of silver mist drifted between carved pillars of black stone. Glowing fires burned in braziers along the walls, their light reflecting off polished floors of dark crystal. Alien nobles stood in a wide circle, their strange eyes fixed on the single human standing at the center. Captain Elias Ward felt the weight of all those stares pressing down on him. His boots echoed on the smooth floor, each step sounding far too loud in the silence. He had walked into battlefields before, but never had he felt such crushing attention. He was one man surrounded by hundreds of beings who looked at him as if he were prey. He told himself to breathe, to stand tall, to act like the envoy he was trained to be. Humanity had only just begun speaking with the Ziyari Empire, and trust was thin. His mission had been clear. Present the human alliance as honorable, negotiate trade, and show that humans were not weak. Yet when the message arrived from the Queen herself, summoning him to her throne, Elias had known this was no normal meeting. The throne itself was raised on a great dais, carved from a single block of shimmering obsidian. Upon it sat the alien queen. She was taller than any human woman, her posture straight and commanding. Her skin was covered in silver scales that gleamed like polished metal. A long crown of bone-like ridges rose from her head, giving her an almost dragon-like presence. Her eyes were narrow and bright, glowing with a golden fire that seemed to pierce through Elias's thoughts. She had the air of someone who had never been refused. When the herald struck the floor with a long staff, the hall fell completely silent. The queen rose slightly from her throne, her long robes flowing around her like liquid metal. Her voice carried across the chamber, deep and sharp at once, each word translated into Elias's ear through a small device. "Human," she said, her gaze locking onto him. "You have come into my domain, carrying the words of your fragile species. You seek alliance, you seek respect, but I offer you something greater and deadlier." Elias's chest tightened. He expected a test, perhaps demands for territory or military aid. What he did not expect were the next words. "You will wed me," the queen declared, her voice rising, echoing against the black stone walls. "Or you will face execution before the eyes of my empire." The hall erupted into gasps and murmurs. Dozens of alien nobles leaned closer to one another, whispering in disbelief. Some laughed cruelly, as if mocking the humans' certain doom. Others looked hungry, like predators watching the end of prey. Elias froze. For a moment he thought he had misheard. His heart pounded in his chest, loud in his ears. Wed her, or die? He looked up at the queen again. Her golden eyes did not waver. Her scaled face showed no trace of humor. She was not joking. The words hit him harder than any battlefield ambush ever had. Elias had faced soldiers, bombs, and the cold silence of space. But this was something no training manual had ever prepared him for. The guards lining the walls shifted their weapons slightly, as if waiting for him to refuse so they could cut him down where he stood. The nobles grinned, baring sharp teeth, expecting a short spectacle. In their eyes, this human envoy was no warrior. He was fragile, soft. They thought he would beg for mercy or perhaps try to run only to be cut down. But Elias did not move. He did not speak. His lips pressed together and his mind raced. If I say yes, what happens? If I say no, I die right here. But why would she demand this? What game is she playing? He searched her face for answers. The queen stared back, unblinking, like a predator measuring prey. Yet there was something else, something behind the steel of her gaze. A calculation. A need. The silence stretched long. Each second felt like a knife against his throat. Elias's training screamed at him to respond, but his instincts told him to wait. He remembered what his instructors had said during negotiations with hostile powers. Sometimes silence is your shield. Let them show their hand first. So he stayed still. He said nothing. The court grew restless. Murmurs turned to laughter, then to jeers. One noble shouted, "The human is already dead. He has no courage to answer." Another hissed, "Slice him now and let us watch his blood decorate the floor." The guards stepped closer, their armor glinting in the firelight. But still the queen raised her hand, silencing them all. Her expression had not changed, but her eyes narrowed, studying Elias like a puzzle she could not yet solve. "You do not answer," she said slowly, her voice colder than before. "You stand before me silent when any other being would beg or break." Elias forced himself to keep breathing evenly. Inside, his heart thundered, but outwardly he kept his stance tall, his chin lifted. He knew if he showed weakness, they would tear him apart. The queen leaned back in her throne, her robe spilling like rivers of silver down the dais. "Interesting," she murmured. "The human does not kneel. He does not beg. Perhaps he is more than I expected." The nobles shifted uneasily. Some frowned, others whispered with new suspicion. Elias remained silent, but inside his thoughts burned. He could not let them see his fear. He could not let them control his choice. For now, silence was his weapon. The queen raised her hand again, and the fires along the walls flared higher. Her voice rang out across the hall, louder, sharper, final. "You have until the next rising of our twin moons to give me your answer. Wed me and share my throne. Or face execution before all." The nobles cheered wildly at the announcement, their voices echoing like thunder. The guards struck their weapons against the floor in rhythm, as if celebrating a spectacle to come. Elias stood frozen in the middle of it all, his mind spinning. He had never imagined his mission would lead to this. The palace of the Ziyari Empire was a maze of dark corridors, towering arches and shifting shadows. Elias Ward walked through them with 2 guards at his side. Their armor clinked with each step, their faces hidden behind helmets shaped like snarling beasts. Neither spoke and neither looked at him except when he slowed his pace. Then a sharp jab from a spear urged him forward again. He felt like a prisoner, even though no chains bound his wrists. The queen's command still rang in his head. Wed me or face execution. He could still hear the roar of the court, the laughter, the whispers. Every second since then had been heavy with disbelief. It was one thing to risk his life for diplomacy, but another to be trapped in a political snare he didn't even understand. As they moved deeper into the palace, Elias forced himself to study his surroundings. He needed to know everything, every door, every guard, every possible escape. The walls here were carved with murals of battles long past. He saw scenes of the Ziyari defeating other alien races, their warriors towering over broken armies. In every picture, the Ziyari queen was at the center, always victorious, always supreme. The message was clear. The queen ruled through power, not mercy. Finally, the guards stopped before a large door that slid open with a hiss. Inside was a chamber meant for guests, though Elias doubted it had been prepared with kindness. The room was wide, its walls glowing faintly with embedded crystals. A table of black stone stood in the middle, with a platter of strange fruits and glowing liquids. A bed sat against one wall, its frame sharp and angular like everything else in the palace. The guards left him there without a word. The door closed and Elias was alone. He sat at the table but did not touch the food. His mind churned. Why me? Why marriage? Why in front of the entire court? He thought about the queen's eyes burning with golden light. She had not looked at him the way a ruler looked at a servant. She had studied him, tested him, almost challenged him. But there was no mistaking the danger. If he chose wrong, he would die, and his people's first contact with this empire would end in blood. A soft sound broke his thoughts. The wall across the room shimmered and a hidden door slid open. Elias jumped to his feet, ready for an attack. Instead, a figure slipped inside. A Ziyari noble dressed in dark blue robes, his scaled face thinner, his eyes sharp. He held no weapon, only a sly smile. "You are braver than you look, human," the noble said, his voice low and mocking. "But bravery will not save you. Do you know why she chose you?" Elias said nothing. His instincts told him not to trust this man, but he also knew silence might draw more out of him. The noble chuckled. "Ah, you play the same game you played in the throne room. Clever, very clever. But you should understand something. Her demand was not born of affection. It was born of desperation." Elias's eyes narrowed. The noble continued, stepping closer. "Our queen is strong, yes, but she is not unchallenged. The empire is divided. Rivals plot against her, and now she drags a fragile little human into her court, demanding he become her mate. It reeks of weakness. Many here already whisper that she has lost her judgment." The noble leaned close, his breath sharp and cold. "If you say yes, you will not be her husband, you will be her leash. The rivals will use you as proof she cannot rule alone. If you say no, you will die, and your death will give them reason to overthrow her entirely. Either way, the empire burns, and humanity will burn with it." Elias's jaw tightened. The noble smiled again, clearly pleased with the weight of his words. "I do not care what you choose, human. But remember, your answer will decide more than your life. It will decide the fate of two worlds. The noble slipped back through the hidden door and it sealed behind him with a hiss. Elias stood still for a long time, staring at the empty wall. His mind raced. The Queen's ultimatum had seemed like a personal trap, but now he understood. It was bigger than him. The Empire was already unstable, and his choice would either strengthen or shatter it. He sat heavily on the bed, his hands clasped together. He remembered Earth, the voices of his people, the hope that humanity might finally stand among the stars as equals. If he failed here, that dream could die before it ever began. For hours, he paced the room, weighing every possibility. Marriage to the Queen would bind him to her and make humanity a target. Refusal meant certain death and possibly a war. There seemed to be no safe path. But Elias Ward was not a man who believed in safe paths. He had survived by being unpredictable, by thinking like no one else. And he would not let this empire, or its queen, decide humanity's future without a fight. That night, when the moons rose high above the palace, Elias looked out the window. He saw the twin moons glowing silver in the alien sky, their light spilling across the city. Somewhere beyond those towers, enemies plotted. Somewhere in the palace, the queen waited, and tomorrow she would demand his answer. Elias clenched his fists. He did not yet know what he would say, but he knew one thing. He would not play by their rules. The silence of the night was broken by distant shouts and the clash of steel. Elias's eyes narrowed as he saw flames flicker on the horizon. Somewhere in the city, a riot or an attack had begun. He realized then that his time was even shorter than he thought. The Empire was already tearing at its own seams. The twin moons had barely faded from the alien sky when the palace guards came for Elias. Their spears glimmered in the dawn light, and their heavy boots echoed through the corridors as they marched him back toward the great hall. Elias walked tall, though inside his chest his heart pounded like war drums. Today he would have to give his answer. Today his silence would no longer be enough. The palace seemed even more alive than before. Nobles filled the corridors, whispering to one another as he passed. Some sneered, others smirked, but all of them carried the same look in their eyes: expectation. They expected to watch him crumble. They expected a weak human to bow or be slaughtered. The great doors of the throne room opened, and the sound of alien horns filled the air. The court was already gathered, hundreds of eyes turning toward him. The queen sat upon her obsidian throne, her figure glowing in the firelight. Her golden eyes burned brighter than the flames, fixed on him as if he were prey walking into a predator's den. Elias's boots struck the crystal floor, each step carrying him closer to her dais. He stopped at the center of the hall. Silence fell like a shroud. The herald's voice rang out sharp and commanding. "Captain Elias Ward of humanity, the Queen demands your answer. Will you accept her hand or face death?" Every noble leaned forward. Some licked their lips. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons. Elias raised his head and looked directly at the Queen. Her face was calm, unreadable, but her eyes were sharp with challenge. His mouth was dry, but his voice was steady. "I cannot answer." Gasps filled the hall. Some nobles burst into laughter, others roared in outrage. The guard shifted instantly, ready to cut him down. The Queen lifted her hand and silence fell once more. Her gaze narrowed. "You dare speak so? You stand before me and say you will not answer." Elias's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. "You demand that I wed you. You demand that I choose life or death with no knowledge of why. No human can make such a choice blindly. If you want my answer, I need the truth." The chamber shook with fury. Nobles shouted curses, calling him arrogant, calling him unworthy. A voice cried out, "Kill him now!" Another hissed, "He insults the throne!" But the Queen raised her hand again, silencing them all. Her golden eyes never left Elias. "You refuse to bend," she said slowly, her voice a blade cutting the silence. "You refuse to beg. You ask for time." Elias stood firm. "Yes." The court erupted again, but the Queen's gaze held them in check. For the first time, her lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. "Very well," she said. "You are bold, human. Boldness can be dangerous, or valuable." She rose from her throne, her robes flowing like rivers of silver. The nobles bowed their heads as she descended the dais, her tall frame moving with the grace of a predator. She stopped only a few feet from Elias, towering over him. Up close, her scales glimmered like armor, her presence almost crushing, yet Elias did not step back. He met her eyes, refusing to break. For a long moment the hall was silent, the entire empire watching. Finally the queen spoke, her voice softer, but edged with fire. "Follow me." Without another word she turned and strode toward a side chamber. The guards moved instantly to block Elias, but she raised her hand. "He comes with me alone." Whispers rippled through the court, but none dared oppose her. Elias followed her into the chamber. The doors closed behind them, sealing out the noise of the court. The room was smaller, darker, its walls lined with strange weapons and banners. A fire burned low in a black brazier, casting shadows across the floor. The queen stopped at the center and turned. For the first time, Elias saw something new in her eyes. Not only power, but weariness. "You want truth?" she asked. Her voice was quieter here, but still sharp. "Then hear it. My empire is breaking. My rivals circle like carrion beasts waiting for me to falter. They whisper that I am weak, that I cannot rule without a consort." She stepped closer, her gaze burning into him. "If I choose one of my own kind, they will see it as a victory for one faction, and war will follow. But if I choose you, a human, an outsider, then no rival gains the throne. The empire unites under shock and fear." Elias felt the weight of her words. His suspicion had been right. This was not about marriage. It was about power. "You are not my choice out of affection," the queen continued, her voice cold. "You are my choice out of necessity. You are a symbol, a weapon, and if you accept, you will not be my husband, you will be my shield." Elias clenched his fists. He had expected lies, but not such raw honesty. He took a slow breath. "And if I refuse?" Her eyes narrowed. "Then I kill you before the court. My rivals will cheer, but I will at least show strength in your death." Yet, she paused, her gaze sharp. "Something in you intrigues me. You did not beg. You did not break. Perhaps humanity is not as fragile as they believe." The fire crackled between them. Elias's mind raced. He could see the trap laid bare. Marry her and risk becoming a puppet, refuse and die, either way tangled in her empire's blood. But he also saw something else. In her eyes, beneath the fire and steel, there was a flicker of respect. A recognition that he was not like the others she ruled, and that was his weapon. Elias straightened, meeting her gaze. "Then test me. If you want me to stand beside you, prove that I am worthy, not as a pawn, but as an equal. If I pass, then I will consider your offer. If I fail, you can kill me." The queen's golden eyes widened slightly. The silence stretched long. Then slowly she smiled, not with warmth, but with dangerous amusement. "You dare challenge me? You, a human in my court?" Elias did not waver. "Yes," the queen laughed softly, a sound like a blade sliding free of its sheath. "Very well, Captain Elias Ward, you will have your test. And when it is done, the entire empire will see whether humanity is worthy, or whether your bones belong to my throne." She turned sharply, her robes swirling around her. "Tomorrow at dawn you will face the rite of binding. Survive it, and I will give you my hand willingly. Fail and you will die, and humanity will be remembered only as a species too weak to endure." Elias's pulse thundered, but he stood tall. He had no idea what the rite of binding was, but he had no choice now. The queen's gaze locked on him one final time, filled with fire. "Do not disappoint me." The doors opened and the guards returned. As they led Elias away, he could still feel the weight of her eyes on his back. The court roared with questions when he emerged, but Elias said nothing. He was taken back to his chamber, where the night closed in heavy around him. He sat in silence, staring at the alien sky through the window. Tomorrow he would face the test. Tomorrow the entire empire would watch him rise or fall. The dawn light streamed into the Scifi palace as Elias Ward was escorted to the trial arena. The corridors were alive with whispers and rumors. Nobles crowded the balconies above, eager to see the human envoy meet his fate. Some carried weapons, others had seats of honor, but all eyes were fixed on him. Elias felt the weight of their stares, but he held his head high. The rite of binding would be dangerous, no doubt, but he had survived worse situations with quick thinking and courage. And today he would show the Scifi that humanity was not weak. The arena was enormous. The floor was polished black stone, and the walls rose like mountains, enclosing a space that could hold hundreds. Torches blazed along the walls, and the stands were already packed with spectators. At the center of the arena stood the queen, her robes flowing, her golden eyes fixed on him. "Captain Elias Ward," her voice echoed, amplified by some unseen device. "The rite of binding is ancient. No human has ever survived it. You will face combat, tests of endurance, puzzles of strategy, and the judgment of your mind and heart. Fail any part, and you die." The doors at the far end of the arena opened with a hiss. From the shadows, armored Xiari warriors emerged. They were massive, each nearly twice the height of a human, armed with curved blades that glimmered like liquid silver. Elias's pulse quickened, but he did not step back. He had no weapon, only his instincts and a small utility belt containing tools from Earth, some knives, a small device to emit blinding light, and a compact communicator. The first test was combat. 3 warriors advanced at once, circling him like wolves. Their armor glinted in the torchlight, and their claws scraped the stone floor. Elias remembered his training. Use speed, use intelligence, never fight blindly. He waited for the first warrior to strike. As the blade swung toward him, Elias ducked low and rolled to the side. He grabbed a loose piece of stone from the ground and threw it at the warrior's face, causing him to stagger. The human agility was unexpected. The crowd gasped. Elias didn't stop. He used the environment, dodging between pillars, slipping behind obstacles, and forcing the warriors to collide with each other. One by one, he disarmed them, using their momentum against them. The Queen's eyes narrowed in interest. Few humans had ever shown such cunning in combat. When the first challenge ended, Elias was not unscathed. Cuts and bruises marked his body, but he was still standing. The crowd murmured. Some whispered about human resilience, others scoffed, but all eyes were glued to him. Next came the endurance challenge. A section of the arena floor split open to reveal a pit filled with scorching steam and shifting platforms. Elias had to cross without falling or touching the boiling floor below. The platforms moved unpredictably, some rising, some sinking. He studied the pattern, noting the rhythm. One careful step at a time, he balanced himself, moving with precision and calculation. When a platform dropped suddenly beneath him, he leapt to the next one, his timing perfect. The crowd gasped again. The Queen's golden eyes reflected both approval and intrigue. Then came the trial of strategy. A set of mechanical puzzles emerged from the floor, walls shifting into mazes, gates locking and unlocking with strange alien symbols. Elias had no knowledge of the Xiari symbols, but he noticed patterns and repetitions. Using logic and deduction, he solved each puzzle faster than anyone expected. The nobles whispered furiously. Some doubted a human's ability to comprehend Xiari logic, but here he was, succeeding. The Queen herself leaned forward slightly, fascinated. Finally, the last challenge was judgment of character. The arena walls projected illusions of fallen humans and Xiari citizens, testing Elias's reaction. He could see visions of the innocent being harmed, friends pleading for help, and paths where one choice would save some but doom others. Elias took a deep breath. He realized this test was not about strength or speed, but about decision-making under pressure. He made each choice with care, sometimes sacrificing his own safety to save others, sometimes using clever thinking to find solutions that spared both human and alien lives. The audience was silent. The Queen's eyes glowed brighter, her lips curved in a rare expression of admiration. When the final challenge ended, Elias stood in the center of the arena, battered, bruised, and exhausted. His clothes were torn and sweat and blood marked his skin, but he was alive, and he had conquered every test. The crowd erupted in murmurs and applause. Some nobles cheered, others scowled, but all were forced to acknowledge that the human had survived, and not by chance but by intelligence, courage, and ingenuity. The Queen descended from her throne and approached him. Her golden eyes studied every detail of his face, every scar, every bruise. "Captain Elias Ward," she said, her voice echoing through the arena, "you have done what no human has done before. You have survived the rite of binding. You have proven that your species is not weak. You are intriguing." Elias straightened, though his legs shook with fatigue. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I survived because I had to. Humanity does not surrender easily." A faint smile touched the Queen's lips. She turned to the court. "Let all witnesses know. This human has passed the rite of binding. Humanity is stronger than many believed." The court erupted, some in disbelief, others in reluctant admiration. Guards lowered their weapons, and even the skeptical nobles murmured their acknowledgement. The Queen turned back to Elias. But do not think your trials are over. Surviving the rite is only the first step. You have proven worth, yes. But now I must decide if you are truly my equal, not just in strength or intelligence, but in spirit. Elias's chest heaved with exhaustion, but a fire burned in his eyes. He had survived, yes, but he also understood the challenge ahead. He had earned respect, but the Queen's game was far from finished. She raised her hand, signaling the end of the trial. Rest tonight, human. Tomorrow your journey with me begins, and the true test of your heart and mind will start. Elias nodded, understanding that the rite had been only the beginning. He had shown what humans were capable of, but he would need every ounce of courage, every spark of ingenuity, and every bit of humanity's unpredictable spirit to survive what came next. The twin moons rose once more, casting their silver light over the arena. Elias looked at the horizon, knowing that he had faced death and won, but that tomorrow would demand more than mere survival. The morning sun barely lit the towers of the Zayari Palace when Elias Ward was called to the Queen's private chambers. The rite of binding had proven his strength, intelligence, and courage. But he knew deep down that the Queen's final judgment would test more than his body or mind. It would test his spirit. The chamber doors opened, and he entered a room unlike any other he had seen. The walls shimmered with holographic projections of the galaxy. Stars, planets, and fleets of alien ships rotated slowly, casting soft light across the floor. The Queen stood at the center, her golden eyes scanning the galaxy with a gaze that could pierce even the soul of a mortal. "Captain Elias Ward," she said, her voice calm but filled with power. "You have passed the rite of binding. Few beings could survive what you faced. Yet the question remains, are you worthy to walk beside me as an equal?" Elias bowed slightly. "I seek no power for myself, Your Majesty. I only wish to protect my people and prove that humanity can be trusted." The Queen's lips curved slightly. She gestured toward the projections, which shifted to show the Empire's map. "My court still questions my decisions. My rivals still plot against me. Accepting you, a human, as my partner is not only dangerous, it could destabilize everything." Elias studied the map. He understood immediately that she was testing his judgment, not his courage. If he spoke incorrectly, he could give her enemies reason to strike. But he also knew there was a way to use this moment to build trust between their worlds. He took a deep breath. "Your Majesty," he said, "strength does not always come from size or armies. Sometimes it comes from ideas, from courage, and from loyalty. If I stand beside you, I will not be a pawn or a weapon. I will be a partner who respects you and humanity alike. Together we can unite your empire and prevent unnecessary bloodshed." The Queen studied him silently. For a long moment, only the sound of the distant galaxy projections filled the room. Then slowly she stepped closer. "You speak boldly," she said. "Most would fear me. Most would beg or grovel. Yet you do not. You see beyond the throne, beyond fear, beyond politics. You see the bigger picture." Elias met her gaze steadily. "Because humanity is small compared to your empire, yes. But we are not weak. We adapt, we survive, and we fight with intelligence. That is what makes us valuable. That is what makes me a worthy ally." The Queen's golden eyes gleamed with interest. She nodded once, slowly, as if agreeing with herself. "Very well, Captain Elias Ward. You have shown strength, cunning, and wisdom. You have faced death and endured. And now you have proven the most important thing, your spirit." She turned, gesturing for him to follow her to the throne room. As he walked behind her, Elias could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. The court had gathered again, eager to witness the human's final decision. When they entered, the room fell silent. The Queen raised her hand, and even the murmuring nobles fell quiet. "This human," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "has survived the rite of binding. He has proven that humanity is not weak. He has faced challenges that would break any ordinary being, and he has shown loyalty, courage, and wisdom beyond measure." Gasps and whispers filled the chamber. Some nobles looked shocked, others outraged, and a few nodded with respect. The Queen turned to Elias. "Captain Elias Ward, do you accept the responsibility of standing beside me? Not as a subject, not as a tool, but as a partner?" Elias looked around the hall. He saw not only the alien nobles, but also the human delegation, their eyes wide with hope. He felt the weight of his species upon him. "I accept," he said firmly, "but only if it benefits both our peoples. I will not be a pawn. I will not bow blindly. Together we will build trust and strength, not fear and bloodshed." The Queen studied him. her golden eyes sharp but thoughtful. Then slowly she extended her hand. Then we are agreed. For a moment the court held its breath. A human and the queen of the Zayari Empire, an unprecedented union. Some whispered that it was madness. Others saw hope. The queen turned to address the entire court. Let it be known that this union is not born of fear nor of weakness. It is born of choice, courage, and understanding. Humanity has proven itself today. Let all remember this day. The chamber erupted in murmurs, cheers, and disbelief. The guards lowered their weapons. Some nobles bowed reluctantly, some with genuine respect. The queen's rivals exchanged uneasy glances. They had underestimated the human, and they would not forget it. Elias felt exhaustion in every muscle, every bone, yet a sense of triumph filled him. He had not only survived, he had changed the perception of his entire species in this alien empire. The queen's golden eyes met his. Tomorrow we begin the work of unity, she said. You will walk beside me, human, and together we will show the galaxy that courage and wisdom are not limited to one species. Elias nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This was no simple marriage or alliance. This was the beginning of a partnership that could reshape the stars. As the twin moons rose once more above the palace, their silver light spilled across the city. Elias looked out from the balcony beside the queen. The city stretched before him, vast, alive, dangerous, but full of possibility. He turned to the queen. Humanity will not fail you, he said quietly. And you will not fail humanity, she replied. Her voice soft but firm. For the first time, Elias felt a sense of true purpose. He had faced death, deceit, and doubt, and he had emerged not just alive but respected. He had shown that humans, though small in the galaxy, could rise to challenges no other species could endure. The court watched as the queen and the human captain stood side by side. History would remember this day not for fear, not for execution, but for courage, unity, and the triumph of a human spirit. And somewhere deep within the galaxy, other races would hear of this union and rethink what it meant to face humanity. For in the heart of one human, the universe had witnessed something rare. The true power of intelligence, courage, and determination. Elias Ward, human envoy, had turned the Queen's shocking command into a victory, for himself, for his people, and for all of humanity. The twin moons glowed above, casting their light on the palace, the city, and the union that had changed the course of the Zayari Empire forever.